Are we live yet?
Yes, we are.
Are we live yet?
Yes, we are.
Why do you sound like that, Sam?
I've gone through puberty and life, and now I am dark and gritty.
Oh my god, you look it too. Welcome, everybody, to the third episode of Couch Theater. This is a different episode. We're not really watching a movie and talking about it. We're just talking about a topic. This is Couch Theater Popcorn Edition. Sam and Raph have thoughts and opinions and want to talk about their thoughts and opinions and hope you care to listen.
My biggest thought and opinion would be, I don't think anybody can keep up that gritty voice.
What's his name?
Clint Eastwood?
No.
Jason Statham.
Christian Bale.
Christian.
That is going off topic right off the start. Like you see the Ben Affleck version, they use a vocoder or a device or whatever. He doesn't have to maintain that voice. Whereas for the Christian Bale version, for whatever ridiculous reason, I don't know, some sense of like performance of true art, I don't know, he decides to just talk like that the entire time, and it is ridiculous. It actually sometimes just pulls you away from the story, and you're just like, what is going on? Please, can someone modify his voice without him having to talk like this the entire time?
Imagine, though, being like a character, like he does it during, like, while he has a costume. But imagine a person just always talking with a gritty voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you order a cheesecake? Or a number 2, a big Whopper from, Burger King. How do you do it?
I would like to have a big Whopper with extra cheese.
You want fries with that, sir?
Yes. And I can have some mayonnaise with that fries.
You sound like Venom. But yes, this is our topic. We're wondering, are movies getting too dark and gritty these days?
And the TLDR version of this conversation is no. Moving on. I guess maybe framing is important. So for something to be called going gritty or going dark, it has to have been in a non-gritty or non-dark state to begin with. So I think it would be ridiculous to say horror movies are getting too gritty these days. It's like, what are you talking about? It's a horror movie. Actually, as I say that, I almost want to take that back and say horror movies might get too gritty. I guess maybe in the way we're defining gritty. I'll keep going. Maybe I'll have to revise this entire statement. But I more think of it in terms of things that are normally not necessarily like for kids or anything, but just more positive, bubbly. Superhero is the one genre that comes to mind. Superman going forth, saving cats from trees, and all the great stuff he does, or Spider-Man swinging from the building tops or whatever he swings from, and that's all supposed to be fun and uplifting. And then you get like the Nolan version of Superman, which is all Hans Zimmer, not the
Nolan version of Batman and the Zack Snyder version of Superman.
That one, that's what I was trying to say. You get the Nolan version of Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. I mean, it was a very good trilogy, but it's just very down to earth. Down to earth's a very weird word to use to describe a guy who's dressed in the bat costume and fighting a guy who's dressed in the clown costume, but it is a bit more grounded. Maybe it's a better term to use. Snyder's Superman, or Man of Steel, is very depressing, morose, very monochrome. Superman is not a very happy character. And a lot of his struggle there is, should he even want to save people, which is not what people typically associate with a Superman story. So you might say these are maybe trying too hard to be gritty or dark. And yeah, I guess we can go from there.
Yeah, so because like grit means, right, to have courage or resolve. It's a display or a strength of character, right? Walter Mitty, yes. He starts off as this very shy guy, but by the end of the movie, he has grit. He has that resolve to stand up to the big man. And, he has a beard and stuff. There's a little bit more grit to him. But it's still there's a lightheartedness to it. It's not like trying to be dark. So I think what we're going for is like, yeah, are movies transforming an originally light or uplifting or story or character and making them more dark and gritty, right?
Yeah. For me, I guess the important distinction. So, random tangent. I know a thing we disagree on. I do not like Superman. I think he's a very boring, unrelatable superhero because saving cats from trees, etc.
You take that back.
I will not.
That
I
cat?
will never take that back.
That cat was down to one life.
Not my problem. I can never find him relatable in any way, shape, or form. He's just this like all-American, everyman superhero guy who's just so great. And you know, I can understand the appeal. I can understand why people like it. I'm not saying he's a bad character. I just don't find him interesting in any way, shape, or form. So I always, and I know my brother actually had similar thoughts. I've always been interested in seeing a story kind of like what Snyder gave us. I want Superman to be put in, to like have moral conflicts and to be put in a situation where like all this power and like all his alienness is, there's something there for me to actually get interested in.
Mm.
Which is why I don't actually hate Man of Steel, but I think that you can take I don't know why you would do this, but you can take the Powerpuff Girls and decide to make it dark and gritty if you had a point to make with it. If you were trying to serve some actual artistic vision, saying, this is my dark and gritty version of Powerpuff Girls and here's my message with that story. Whereas if you're just saying being dark and gritty is the commodity, that's not really a commodity. So I think that's, in my opinion, where Hollywood is getting it wrong. I mean, they see Dark Knight, they see The Man of Steel with its limited success, they see Deadpool, which is something that was like the R-rated thing, and they're like, that's what people want. They want it to be dark and gritty. They want people to get it. They want to see blood and gore and all this stuff. Let's give them Logan, and then they just keep going down this spiral of let everything be dark and gritty, but it's like, that's not what makes good stories good.
Perhaps if we're going to talk about grit, we have to go to the king of grit, Clint Eastwood.
Oh.
Right? So I did look this up. I don't have the stats on me, but I know that over the years, Western movies have been going down. Like there's less production of Western movies. And I said this before and I'll say it again. The Venn diagram between Western movies and gritty movies is, you know, I would say Western movies are basically just a subset of gritty movies almost, because every Western movie is about like that law and order, like outlaw kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a couple of wacky ones in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
98% of it probably fits in the grit, and like a lot of those movies are by Clint Eastwood, and he's phenomenal at doing
A very small percentage of Western movies are by Clint Eastwood.
Okay, fair enough, but I really liked Unforgiven and the way he handled grittiness in there, because even though there was this grittiness, there was this still very human, chaotic world around it. I assume we don't have to say spoiler alert, because I mean this movie was made the same year I was born.
If it's been that long, probably not. But
Yeah.
as much as possible, try to talk around the specific details.
I guess what I would say is the movie presents the world as chaotic. The environment is chaotic. When there's a gun shooting, when there's a duel, it's not just straight up, okay, I'm going to shoot you or you're going to shoot me. There's chaotic elements to it. A person gets shot and they're like limping and they're not dying, and Clint Eastwood doesn't even know how to get closer to kill him, and like, or somebody doesn't have good eyesight anymore so they can't aim as well. It's gritty, but there's an interesting component about like how that plays into this world, how it plays into who wins duels, because ultimately the world is chaotic, and the whole thing about the movie was it's not who's faster at shooting, you know, it's who's calmer, who has that greater resolve. So that was like an interesting movie that played grit well with the story.
Right, because the grittiness, vague as it is if it is anything, it's a setting. I think if you had to split stories into like plot and character and setting and other stuff, like grittiness would fall under a modifier of your setting. You have a gritty setting, whether that means it's a very violent setting or a very, you know, down to earth setting, or however specifically you're defining grit in this sense. it's a setting. You're saying, I'm setting my story in a world where people play hardball or whatever. And that has to be serving your story in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, would you call Game of Thrones gritty?
Yes, I think.
Right? Because I think that's the thing. When a story that's quote unquote gritty, and I'm still having trouble pinning down even what that really means, because I think it's such a weird thing to talk about. When a movie is gritty, in quotes, and it's done well, you don't really have a conversation about how gritty a movie was. Right? I don't watch Unforgiven or Game of Thrones or any of these movies and think, wow, that was so gritty. I love how gritty it was. That's not a thing that comes to mind. Whereas I might watch Batman v Superman and think that was a really gritty version of Batman.
Mm.
I mean, there was more that's trying to do there. I'm not trying to be reductive of it, but that feels like an element that's there trying to put in my face. Saying, here's Batman, but he kills people. Isn't that cool? I'm like, no, it's not cool unless you're actually going to do something with that story-wise that's interesting. Him just killing people in and of itself is not interesting.
Yeah, when you go down the gritty or like dark and gritty route, Marvel movies have a formula, right? It's you have some action, you have...
I don't believe you. Take that back. Marvel movies do not have a formula.
You have a charming character, and you don't really go that gritty, so you always have some like fun element to it, but it keeps you entertained, right? Mm-hmm. The action will be fun, and somebody says a cool one-liner or does something stupid, and you're like, ha 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 ha. If you're going to go down the gritty route, you kind of have to like abandon that source of entertainment with like where humor comes into play, or at least less of it. And so you have to be careful not to just be dry and boring. I think I've seen things that try to be so hard gritty, like literally, like you're saying, don't think about the word gritty too much, like when you watch a movie. Mm-hmm. Some movies try so hard to be gritty that there's almost no character. There's no character, there's no feeling, it's just blah, it's boring. And this is, I know this might be slightly controversial to say, Raph.
I feel like you're somehow going to mention Tenet.
No, okay. I'm not going to say Tenet. So I love the original Justice League TV show, the animated one.
I don't know if I've ever seen it, so
okay.
I can't comment on it.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I am less of a fan of the direct-to-video feature-length animated Justice League movies that have been coming out since like 2010 or whatever.
Those are more in the New 82 or whatever, the New 52, whatever they call that.
Yeah, Justice League versus Teen Titans, Dark Apocalypse, Flashpoint Paradox, these movies. And here is what I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a couple of them. And I must say, it is sometimes the most boring thing I've ever seen. It feels like the people who made it are like, Dark Apocalypse, it's dark. And then there's nothing with that. I watch a character and they're boring. I see Beast Boy dancing at one point, and you know what? It's the most boring dancing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe somebody has made Beast Boy dancing boring to me. Like, how do you do that?
With skill and talent.
You abandon everything and go for this more gritty and tone-deaf environment.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Teen Titans, we mentioned earlier not in this podcast, earlier today, the Titans TV show that's on Netflix, which is, live action version of Teen Titans. I am not the biggest fan of Teen Titans. I don't dislike them. I just not something I followed a ton. I have watched Teen Titans Go. Love that show. I watched a couple of episodes of Titans, and it was just too much. I'm someone, again, like I said earlier, I'm the person who likes Man of Steel because I like that take on Batman. I'm generally not shy about wanting harsh consequences for things that happen in things I watch. But I watched that and I was just like, this is too much. This is not why I came to watch a Titans TV show. Not so that Robin can be beating people up in a back alley and I can just think, wow, he's kind of just a psychopath, isn't he? That's my takeaway from that. I'm like, oh, he's a guy who's beating people up in the alley. There's no superhero aspect to that. Fundamentally, that is what Batman is. He's a rich guy in a costume beating people up. But there's enough mystique and wonder and enough stuff around that you can suspend your disbelief and be like, oh wow, he's a superhero saving Gotham.
Mhm.
But they've in that show managed to remove all of that, and it's just a guy in a costume beating up someone in an alley, and there's nothing interesting about that except perhaps to make me want to call the cops. Like I don't know what they were going for when they were. I have to imagine they were saying, "Here, let's do Titans," but they had recently released Logan and all this stuff. They're like, "Let's have a more quote unquote gritty, dark, edgy version of Titans that people are gonna love." Starfire's gonna punch someone's head off. Robin's gonna crack a skull. It's gonna be cool, and it's not. It's just boring because again, it's really just a setting element, and if you're not doing anything with it, then it's not interesting at all.
There are shows out there that take similar these ideas of the superhero tropes, right? And they flip it on its head and make it dark and gritty and interesting, right?
But there's a point. There's
But,
commentary.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like Invincible,
Yeah.
right? It has this, what if Superman was a bad guy, but, it's not actually Superman, it's Omni-Man, it's a different character, and he's violent and it's gruesome, and there's a lot of, like, facing reality, facing violence and gory things. But through that all, there, like you said, there's a kind of point to it, like the main character has a contention point about trying to save humanity, trying to be a teenager and still being an adult and stuff.
Yeah.
And he still has character. All these people have character. Even Omni-Man, who's just super dark, like, can be super dark, he has these points in where there's actually, like, I don't know, a more human, relatable aspect to him when he's around the house,
Yeah. I agree, because I think that, say, that story is very brutal. When there's violence, it's very violent. There's blood. If you've seen any of the trailers, there's blood, there's gore. It's happening, but that is used as contrast to what the characters are expecting and what perhaps even the audience is expecting when these superheroes go into combat. And that it's kind of like a trauma for the characters when it happens because he's not used to seeing that. And it's quote unquote edginess, gritty, blood, violence, whatever you want to call it. But there's a point. There's a reason it's happening. Similarly, The Boys, which I don't know if you've seen.
I have not seen it, but I'm told I should.
You should. It's pretty good. It's another one which, again, is superheroes, but it's violent. It's very cynical of the entire superhero trope, and sort of saying, if superheroes existed in the world, in a very capitalist society, they'd be commodities basically, and everything they show you be a face. These people they basically be like celebrities, where, not to say there are no great people who are celebrities, but like you can imagine some of them are just shitty people putting on a front. And again, there's a point. There's a reason, there's commentary. Whether or not you enjoy it, you can at least go away from that saying, whoever wrote this had a message they were trying to get across. Beyond, look at this guy blow someone's head off.
Yeah. It sounds like grittiness can be an element in it. It can be an element of the environment. It can be an element of the character. But it's not really a primary identification of the character. If you're a writer and you're like, oh, this guy's gritty. This guy gritty. Like, he's gritty. Like, he no smile. Like,
what is that accent?
I don't know. It's the one I chose.
Okay.
It's my racially ambiguous voice.
Okay. Keep going.
Either way, I think that's where, like, you as a writer then are probably hitting a stump.
Yeah. This character is edgy is not characterization.
Yes.
A character can be edgy, but that cannot be the sole thing about them. And while we're on this topic about superheroes, again, I just said how I liked Invisible and The Boys, and I do enjoy it when people invert the superhero trope and do more cynical things with it. But I'm gonna say this: fundamentally, a guy dressing up in tights and a cape, flying out to save people, is silly. It's a silly concept. It's ridiculous. At its core, it's a ridiculous concept. To attempt to take that and make it grounded, down to earth, and all these other adjectives we're going to use to describe it is kind of ridiculous. Because you're going against the core concept of what we're even doing. You're saying, here's this guy, he's got a cape, he's fighting crime, but take him real seriously, guys.
Quick side note. That is legitimately why my favorite Batman villain isn't the Joker, but Hugo Strange. Because Hugo Strange is actually he doesn't dress up. He's a straight up psychiatrist, and he figures out Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne, right? Spoiler alert, Batman is Bruce Wayne.
Is that a spoiler?
I don't know.
Where is that ever a spoiler?
Anyhow, I like him because he looks at Batman differently. Whereas like others look at him as like the superhero, he looks at him as there's a mental aspect to him that's intriguing. He wants to dissect him as a patient kind of thing, right? Which is what makes him interesting. Sorry, side note, I just really needed to say that.
Batman should see a therapist. I agree. Perhaps not Hugo Strange, but a therapist would be good for Batman. He does have problems. While we're given PSAs.
Yeah. So I think it sounds like we're okay with gritty movies. Gritty movies has always existed because we've had Clint Eastwood and Jason Statham and
all that stuff. There have been movies that have delved into this. I don't even know what to call it. This lens of humanity or the human condition or whatever. It's just, and maybe it's not even a thing. Maybe it's just something we're noticing and no one else is noticing. But it definitely feels like there was a wave of and a push for movies to come out and this be a defining feature of them. How different they are from the original source material. Because God forbid anyone creates anything new these days. In that they're way edgier, way darker, and all that. And some of them are good.
And we don't appreciate too much making a original content that's not meant to be dark and gritty, making it too dark and gritty.
Again, I'm never going to say don't do a specific thing with any story, because if you have a story to tell, you have something to do that you think is worth doing. Okay, well, maybe I take that back. Everyone probably thinks the story they're making is worth making. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it, perhaps. But if someone genuinely has a point and a reason why they're doing it, that isn't just, this is the trend right now, then go for it. Whether it flops or not, I am down to see anyone express their artistic vision and blah, blah, blah. I want there to be a point beyond the surface.
I do not accept Superman as a bad guy. I'm okay with Man of Steel. I actually like Man of Steel. Mm-hmm. I'm not okay with Superman as a bad guy. I guess I'm pointing to Injustice, the comic and the
Gods Among Us.
Yeah. I can even see Wonder Woman sort of as a bad guy because she's like a warrior. Like she's not a superhero in the technical sense, in that she's okay with. Well, she was born and raised in an Amazonian environment. Mm-hmm. She's literally would be more okay with killing than other people, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes her kind of like tough. Superman, you can do moral things with him. Mm-hmm. You just can't make him bad. I can't accept a story that makes Superman bad.
Really? In Injustice, I might be wrong. Isn't that, it's a whole new universe, right? Where he didn't land with Pa Kent and Ma Kent, right? He landed somewhere else, or maybe he landed with the government or something like that. He has a completely different upbringing. Isn't that the point of Injustice?
I read the comics, or at least a few issues, a long time ago. What I remember was Joker setting off a nuclear bomb in Metropolis and killing Lois Lane, and that's kind of what turned him bad.
I mean, that itself is just silly. The fact that this one woman is the only thing keeping him on the side of righteousness.
Yeah.
But I'm not against the idea of Superman. Doesn't the Dark Knight comic go into this, where he lands in
he's monopolized by the government.
Yeah, he's monopolized by the government. But you can have a situation where, what if Superman didn't land with the Kents? He landed in some weird Russian Secret Service thing, or landed with the U.S. government, and he turns out to be an extremely different person. And now you have all our regular heroes, and they're up against this person who has Superman's powers, and that's kind of interesting. Like, oh my God, that's Superman, but he's not the good guy. I mean, there's only so much you can do with that, but it's interesting to delve into what that could be.
So I like I like Invincible for taking basically Omni-Man and making him like Superman, right?
You're just against the idea of using the specific
Yes,
character Superman.
You can't just take Superman and say, okay, he's evil, because like he's one of the most righteous character.
They can, they did it.
Yeah, I guess so. But he's like he's meant to be one of the most righteous characters, where like other characters may fall short. He kind of represents that icon.
Does he though? Doesn't he fall short?
Sometimes, yes. And even in the original like cartoons in the 1995, 1998, whatever series, like he falls short when he meets Darkseid, but like you can't make him bad, you know? That's like making Luke Skywalker think that Darth Vader has good in him, but a emo nephew has slight bad thoughts and maybe I should kill him.
This is a hard left towards Star Wars all of a sudden. On The Last Jedi, in case no one's aware what we're talking about right now, another movie that I don't hate, but you dislike. I think you're putting the character on a pedestal.
It's called character assassination. It can happen, and does happen.
I don't think that was the greatest execution, but I don't think that idea is character assassination. Go back and watch the original trilogy and take off your nostalgia lens. Luke is not that great a guy. And it's very conceivable that after having gone through all of that and after who knows how many years, I forget whatever time, 30, 40, 50 years of trying to resurrect the Jedi and failing and experiencing all this thing, that he has become a kind of a jaded person. It's a very conceivable thing.
Let's talk about what Darth Vader has done,
okay.
And let's talk about what Kylo Ren has done.
I'm not saying that he's correct. I'm saying he can easily become that person.
Darth Vader, he killed an entire tribe of villagers, and not just the men, but the women and the children.
A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Yeah, continue.
I cannot go on like this. Hold on.
Yeah, yourself. Before you start making Star Wars memes.
He killed pupils, right?
He executed Order 66.
Executed Order 66. Brought the whole galaxy under the reign of Palpatine.
Galactic
Empire, which is, you know, in many ways a reflection of Nazis. Okay? So you have that guy who's done all these things for years, evil things for years, and he cuts off Luke's hand. And what does Luke do? Luke says there's still good in him, I can feel it. Now, Kylo Ren has some bad dreams or something. He has some bad thoughts. Some bad thoughts. And then Luke Skywalker decides to walk up to his bed and think, maybe I should kill this nephew of mine.
Yes, that's true. Darth Vader had done some bad things, and Luke, in his youth, stood there and said, there is good in this person, maybe. And that was the message of the original trilogy. That's what they were getting across. And the new trilogy was saying, this guy, who used to be such a great guy, has gone through so much crap that he's actually fallen to the point where he is considering this. That's all it's saying. He's gone through so much stuff in the past couple of decades. All this time he's been off screen, he has become the kind of person who would consider this. That's how far he has fallen. And he does have there's a little bit of a redemption arc in that story as he returns to maybe a little bit of the Luke you remember from that. That is a very conceived. People can be good people and then grow up and become not so good people. That is a thing that happens.
We can move on from this if you want. But I'm just going to say, by considering this, you meant walk up to his bed, entered his room, and
it's a movie. And they were being visual about it.
And ignited his lightsaber.
It was visually dramatic.
That's what we're talking about when we're saying considering.
Pulling back from this tangent.
We are okay with gritty movies if it has another point to it, if it's not the primary identification of the movie or the setting or the person.
Yeah, that seems to be our consensus.
Yes.
What is your consensus? Tell us in the comments down below, or up above, or to the left, or to the right. Shake it all around. Wait, that's not the right song. What song am I thinking of?
I have no idea. To the left, to the left.
Everything you own in a box to the left. I won't say anymore because maybe copyright. I don't think Beyonce cares about our podcast enough to copyright it.
Sorry, Beyonce.
Anyway, this has been Couch Theater Popcorn Edition. It's actually not that much shorter than our regular episodes.
We had a lot of tangents.
Well, that's what you're here for, maybe. Tangents, sines, cosines, and on that note, we'll be cosigning out. Haha! I'm funny.